Lawsome by ConsultWebs. Breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm with your host, Tanner Jones.
Hello to all our Lawsome listeners out there. Today on the show, we have Philip and David, two lawyers who have been friends since childhood, went to law school together, but each took a different career direction outside of law. Their unique paths have ultimately led them back together, providing them with everything they now apply in the legal profession. So as of this year, 2022, they've decided to follow their passion for law and start their own law firm called Danisi and Gassman, handling all aspects of venture capital and corporate law. Today, they're going to share their story with us, the story of entrepreneurship and law, and where it all got started. Welcome, guys.
Nice to see you, Tanner. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So you've both come a long way. Philip used to work on Wall Street, as I understand, becoming one of North America's top derivatives brokers. And David developed his career in the entertainment industry, working for major film studios, TV networks, plus 8 years of working for Hugo Boss in sales and marketing. All of this is very impressive, guys. And my guess is your prior experiences have now helped maybe ease the work or at least the complexity of your own law firm. So I'd love for one of you to start. Just share a little bit about how it got started.
It got started when my law career never began because I accepted a law job out of law school in securities law and got an offer to take a left turn and go into the world of derivatives on Wall Street as an interbank broker. So I found during my 20-year career in derivatives, which is one of the highest ends of finance that existed, my law background really was helpful. And it was helpful in many ways. Once I was under contract, negotiating all the terms of the contract, bonus structure, non-competes, and everything about my employment, intellectual property. So my law helped me, and with that, I had a lot of my colleagues and even clients who were the bankers. They would ask me about their employment issues. There were also people that were dealing with, HR issues, whether it be discrimination, whether it be harassment, what have you. And I was always helping them. So I retired after Wall Street, almost 20 years to the month that I started. And during my retirement, just fulfilling my bucket list of living in a few different places, I was being approached by quite a few of my ex-colleagues and ex-clients. And they were really coming to me in various ways. They were coming to me and asking my legal advice on their employment currently, if they were still with the big banks or the brokerage houses, all the same employment issues, even asking me to represent them or look over contracts or clauses. Then I had a lot of my ex-colleagues or clients that were progressing from working for the big banks and the big brokerage houses that were now going into their own venture capital space, their own startups, maybe venture capital funds, or just some brick and mortar businesses. So they were asking me as well. At that time, I was studying art history in Italy and Italian, and I was getting most of these phone calls at that point about starting companies, my guidance, helping run them, and that's really when the light bulb went off. It hit me the need, my background for it, this built-in clientele, seeing what they all were looking for. There was confidence in my ability of what I established on Wall Street with the trust with a lot of these people, and that I was an attorney. And I flew home from Italy. David was in New York. I was in the Hamptons. He was in the city. I just said, David, meet me at a diner halfway. I have an idea. Because I knew, we are childhood friends and stayed best friends. I was in his wedding party. And I knew the success he had through his diligence and brilliance in Hollywood and then brought back to New York. And it was just a work ethic and a brilliance that was complemented what I did, which I didn't have for what he did. Met at a diner. We sit down, ordered breakfast. I mean, I couldn't even wait for lunch. I was like, meet me in the morning as early as you can. We got there, and before they even poured our water or coffee, I said, hear me out, I have an idea. And that was, I'll let David take it from there, but that's how from my side, it started. I think it's accurate, right, David?
That sounds right to me. And Tanner fills up very, very early. So I had to at least let him give me a couple hours just to get settled and hear what he had to say. But he puts that together and says that really, really well. And I think that what happened at the time that he and I met to discuss this, I would say I was at a little bit of a career crossroads and kind of thinking through what I wanted to do next. Um, and maybe, have something that I can call my own a little bit, and kind of combine the sort of things that I've been working on all this time, and leverage it a little bit. As Philip kind of alluded to, we had used our legal background in a lot of different things that we did, directly or tangentially. My background was a little bit more on the creative and business side. So I was putting together marketing campaigns for a marketing company and built up a clientele of major film studio and TV network clients. And it was phenomenal. I loved it. I probably would have done it forever. But some economic forces got in the way and kind of forced me to sort of reconsider things. And I came back to New York and then plugged myself back into that world for another company in a different arena. But I felt like there was something that I was kind of gnawing at me as well. And when Philip approached me about this, I thought, wow, this is just, almost like on a silver platter, because it was the kind of thing that at this point in your life, you know, if not now, when, and also why not take what's unique about our respective experiences and relationships and skills, combine them, mix that with the sort of legal foundation that we've built, and turn this into something really unique. And I think on a macro level, as Philip sort of alluded to, there were a lot of people on Wall Street that he was working with, and that I knew from my circle, that were starting to look at entrepreneurship a little more seriously. And I think that the more that we saw more people take what they've learned from working for big banks, big law firms, big movie studios, wherever it may be, and start to take those skills and turn it into something that they wanted to do for themselves, we thought we might have something here. And I think, given the background in respectively marketing, client building, and finance and client building, and the legal foundation, we thought, this is something that can be really, really unique and really successful. And I keep going back to that phrase before, if not now, when. So that's sort of the short or long version of it, depending on your attention span. But that's where we are now.
Well, and I recognize, there were turning points for both of you in those moments. And so listeners who are potentially recognizing some of these factors, I mean, both of you guys mentioned specific elements that, one, obviously the need for there has to be a consumer need, and it has to be recognized for there to be potential. The other piece is timing on both the consumer's end, but timing on the business operators end. And it seems like that all worked out well. But that's the idea. We're obviously getting into the piece where it's exciting, but then the reality hits. You start the law firm. Now it's a matter of producing cases. And you're in a competitive industry, obviously, in a competitive market. The firm was founded earlier this year in 2022, and we all recognize starting a law firm could be a daunting endeavor, especially in competitive markets. But you also recognize, I think, given your prior experience in sales and marketing in particular, standing out from competition is a proven way to make a splash in a market. So what would you say are some of the ways, or maybe even some of the competitive advantages that you're leveraging in this field?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. As you said, it's certainly a daunting experience and undertaking, starting your own law firm, not to mention doing it at 52 years old. And, it's, although what we thought was, and it is daunting, it wasn't so daunting. There was no doubt. There was absolutely no doubt. It was more intricate than, once you get involved, there's minutiae to deal with, certainly, that you don't realize. But that was never a question. We felt our backgrounds were going to give us a huge advantage. And it kind of has worked that way. We do see that what I did on Wall Street has established credibility for the new clients we've taken on and we have been able to take on clients, as well as my ex-colleagues and ex-clients, brokers and bankers. They are now in a space, going into a space that they need what I do now, based on my relationships with them from the past. So that was a big thing to do. And Dave, we found the same thing with David, and even with people that came on board. Basically, we had one client who came on board based on my financial background in Wall Street, and they needed to be marketed a certain way and hadn't even thought of a concept that David's background led them to marketing, which gave them a huge step forward and a door to a group of people that they never even imagined. So we've kind of been able to leverage that.
That's wise. David, would you add anything there?
Yeah, I think, and Philip said it really well, and I think that it's a combination of a couple of things. I think it's experience in business, so that those tangible things. So you're talking about, understanding marketing, the financial implications, business growth and business development, down to the granular, balance sheets, P&L, and those sorts of things, so that you can kind of talk that language and understand what a business client is going through. So I think that's one tangible key. I think also there's an intangible key when it comes to that, where I think, and I'm not trying to paint a broad brush, but a lot of lawyers are really focused on papering the deal, safeguarding, what a business can and cannot do, somewhat risk averse, which certainly makes sense. But we do feel like we have built in some of that intangibility, where we understand the business person's mindset. We look at it from a can-do sort of perspective. We are a little more comfortable, I believe, in thriving in that chaos, because we've both been through that chaos in other aspects of our careers. So that's, really important. And I think specifically for me, I would say that now more than ever, it's important for lawyers, and frankly for anyone in any business, to be able to craft a message, to tell a story, to relate to their clients, in this kind of ubiquitous, atmosphere of content everywhere. I think that's that much more important. So if we have business clients that we're working with, and we can not only advise them on a specific objective that they have, but also be an advocate for them, an ambassador for them, be able to tell their story to investors, to clients, to move beyond simply, like I said, papering the deal. I think that's a really important value add that we can bring to the table. And one last thing I'll say, I brought up an example earlier in another discussion where, when I was in law school, and Philip and I were in law school, you're taught to learn how to write in this kind of issue rule application conclusion, the IRAC approach. And you're very orderly, and everything's very detailed and very, factual and thought through. But when I went into marketing, I kind of had to unhook that part of my brain a little bit and learn how to write in headlines and to get attention and to intrigue and give people a reason to read on. Now I feel like those two kind of thought processes have merged in a way where it's to our advantage. So that's something specific to me, amongst other things, that I think is really vital.
I see that. Yeah. Perspective's everything. And it's so often that business owners will have blind spots, and they don't recognize them. And anytime you add experiences, diversified experiences in particular, different career paths, naturally you're able to open up those blind spots, shine lights on those blind spots, which help you ultimately make better decisions.
And also, as you mentioned, Tanner, it's true. It's right. Not only blind spots, but sometimes, well, often, not even sometimes, more often than not, it's having a fresh set of eyes, an outside point of view, look at something, is usually very advantageous to people. Getting a fresh perspective, and we've been able to do that not just for the legal work, but become a functioning part of helping a few of our clients with their companies operational, and that's really been an advantage.
Let me change directions on you guys a bit here, because it's safe to say you've been out of the legal world for quite some time, and nowadays, arguably we're in a much faster paced world. Industries have evolved; they're continuing to rapidly evolve, and I would argue law is no exception. So even the use of technology, it's clearly a must for all businesses, including law. How is this transition back to being in the legal world? What does it look like in that respect? Any obstacles you guys have faced and overcame?
Well, there's always going to be obstacles, and it's never easy, so we wouldn't pretend that it is. However, um, what's interesting is that a lot of these technological trends that we're talking about, and a lot of these aspects of technology that apply to law, we've taken the time to really learn, to study. I will never say that COVID was a blessing for anybody. However, we took the advantage of that time, which delayed us a little bit, to really get even that much more up to speed on things like AI and cloud computing and automation, and how that can help your ease your workload, at least so far as those non-legal things go, and then also how to make yourself more efficient from a legal sense. And honestly, in the last couple of years ramping up to this, we were in that same sort of remote hybrid, vacuum like everybody else. So I do think there's enough acceleration of changes just post COVID that were happening to everyone at the same time. And I feel like we've sort of been able to catch up on some of those. But also just the fact that we're even on a podcast, right now, is another example of just that's technology. We're doing this right now.
What we spent a lot of that downtime doing, which we're good at prior and are very good at now, is learning to know what it is we don't know. That has been, I think it's our strong suit of ours. We cannot know what is away from our generation. So we've been good at identifying and knowing what we don't know, and then going and seeking help and hiring professionals in each area. As I mentioned, there's an entire world. I could try, it's just not in me to be a social media maven. I didn't get it. I spent my years trying to resist and never be on it. And all of a sudden, if you just miss a week, it passes you by. Not only I finally got acclimated to Facebook. I learned that young kids think it's antiquated and they're only looking at TikTok. So anyway, it was important for us to recognize, though, the importance of areas. That's just one example, and hire a person focused on social media for us. That is of a generation of constantly plugged in. And that transpires, I think, in a lot of different facets. As you mentioned, the world is constantly changing. Certainly, we both went elsewhere for 25 years. And in that time, my God, so much. So if we can't know everything, let's try to know what we don't know and get the right people on board.
Well, and just as Phillips alluded to, embracing technology means doing the uncomfortable in many instances, and exploring it like everyone else.
Absolutely. And Tanner, I must say, it's so uncomfortable, so a lot of it.
Well, and Philip brings up a great point. I mean, one of the advantages to that is that once we get the hang of it and feel more comfortable with it, I think it does work to our advantage, because we like the idea of being outward facing. Being able to promote what we're doing, engage with people, talk to people like yourself, and have these kinds of conversations. And technology enables us to do that. And frankly, even if we didn't like to do it, we have no choice, because this is the way you operate these days. And so, I'm always kind of amazed.
Critical part of business.
Like the difference, about so when we started and now. I go on LinkedIn, I see law students who just graduated, who passed the bar, and they're announcing on LinkedIn that they passed the bar, and they're getting comments from deans of law schools, from lawyers like us. And some of these guys and gals may get jobs out of that. And so we had to write letters, and hope that we got a call or a letter back. So it's kind of interesting how that happens.
Embracing technology is certainly a hurdle, but there's no question it's what's necessary, not only for you, but ideally for your clients, and being able to serve them, and going right along that, and generating more clients. You all have unique backgrounds. Those 25 years prior ultimately have given you those new perspectives, given you different experiences, unlike those that left law school and went directly in and practicing law. The whole aspect of networking. And that's been, I've been in the industry and working with lawyers now for well over a decade, and networking is one of those critical pieces that it should never leave you. It should remain a part of you every single day. in activity. And I'm curious to hear from you guys. What have you applied toward the area of networking based on some of the skill sets and experiences you've gained over the last 25 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have found that my job was on Wall Street was very social. Now, in other words, when I left the office at 5, there was the entertaining of clients in all different forms. So the networking wasn't so huge then as was. I knew my client base. They worked for the big banks, and it was their, derivatives could be a very small area, so it wasn't so much as having to branch out. In my time since I retired, my jobs did involve that. And it just taught you how to be social in social situations, and also in networking, listening, really listen with intent and sincerity. And when you have these conversations at the events we go to, luckily we're now starting to see networking opening up. For the first few months of even 22, things were still not in person. We just attended a summit that was for the Bloomberg Wealth Summit was the first one in 2 years that's been in person. So it's just opening up. So the networking, I think, just for myself, and together we do it very well, is the social skills I developed when I was having to be interacting every day. It was almost every night and every weekend. Is that in the networking, it's being sincere, having true interest, we're getting our point across, but then also listening to what other people are doing and, what they have found advantageous. And again, if it's stuff we don't know, learning what it is we don't know.
David, any nuggets?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, when I first started, when I moved to Los Angeles to start my career, my initial stop along the way was for a few years at a talent agency, and that was like a real Shark Tank, not like the show. I mean, this was like the belly of the beast in that world, and you had to be on point. And if you don't have the answer for somebody immediately, you were not of any use to them. And so I learned right there. I said, you got to be proactive. You've got to have the answer before they ask. You got to anticipate. And those kinds of things help in relationships and help in networking. Because what you can do, I think, is you don't fall into a trap of waiting, of having a client, prospective client, someone you're trying to get on board, waiting for you or waiting for you to be responsive to them. You're being anticipatory, and you're kind of taking the lead. And as Philip alluded to, you listen and you show an interest in them and get to know them as people, and they get to know you as a person. That's just more important, not just for your role. And I think relatability, comfort, all play a really big role in addition to being proactive and anticipating. And I think also knowing their business as well as they do, or as close as you can, because once you start to get into those different social contexts, if you will, it really, really helps. And I think people really feel fortunate that they may have you on their side, because they know you understand, that you can relate to what they're going through from a personal standpoint in their business, from a professional standpoint, and you can be a true advocate for them. And that comes out, as Philip alluded to, in multiple interactions. And so we're certainly comfortable with that, because we both had to make our living off of doing that in separate industries. And so that's a natural extension of that.
Several great tips, guys. And I don't want to overlook the power behind Philip's suggestion of listening being a tremendous networking tool. So often you go doing research around networking, and it's all about what to ask, what to say, how to approach. And it's the simplicity of listening, because the more you listen, the more you can add value, the more you find ways to be able to offer value, which is the big part of effective networking. Yeah, nice guys. So I would say that your story serves as a tremendous example, and I'll go as far as to say an inspiration to any lawyer who, of course, lawyers who may be considering this idea of, jumping out in faith, starting their own firm, hanging their shingle, going back. Those who've, left law school and thought they would never go back. Now they're having those turning points that you guys referenced earlier in the conversation. What would be your advice to those professionals?
You know, Tanner, it's really funny you say that because obviously I went to an entirely different world out of law school. So and I meant not only work world, that was my world that I circulated in was finance, Wall Street. It takes over your, it's all in New York. So people in my world did not know I was an attorney. I took the New York State bar and I kept my status active. So often, if I'd meet an attorney in that world of finance, when someone's attorney was there or someone an attorney, and I'd say, "Oh, I'm an attorney," and they said, They'd always say, "Smart move. You didn't go into law," you know. And you see so many of the people that were saying, "I can't wait to be done with this and then pursue my next career, or my next field, or my next passion." And we went and did the opposite, right? I can't tell you how many times I'd meet lawyers say, "Oh, I'm an attorney." They'd say, "Oh, gee, wow, what a smart move. You never practiced." And now we did the opposite. So again, it was why I did that. And to go into Wall Street, I knew it. It was my passion. It was undeniable. When I saw it, I knew it. And it was the same thing when it was time to come back, as I described, from Italy. And I called David. If that's your passion, you follow it and don't hesitate.
Yeah, I think Philip brings up a great point, and I would just add, if for people who want to or are thinking about doing something like what we did, I would certainly keep in mind, the type of industry and the type of area of practice that you'd want to do. I think certainly there's moves from outside of the legal world into like what we're doing, and there's certainly other moves where there's just as much deliberation going on for different people at different stages of their life and their career, especially within the COVID era, if you will, whether they're at big firms and thinking about striking on their own, whether they're in smaller firms and striking on their own, a certain area of practice that they practice for a big firm and they might want to do it as their own practice, or sort of like us, and to some degree, they have a specific business that they're in as a business person, and then decide, I know this really well, I have a legal background, and then I want to combine the two. So if they think long and hard, I think about what area they want to do. I would tell you point blank, I'm sure Philip would say the same, we wouldn't go into being general practitioners right now. It just wouldn't make any sense. I think this makes a lot more sense that we are focused more on business, on corporate, on things that draw upon our strengths and our experiences, with some subsets of that lay into other areas of law. But I don't know that I would say, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer and I'm going to take on criminal trials. That's not necessarily what takes what leverages those backgrounds and bring us to the present day. So that's really key. And I would also say, lastly, that it's a cliche, but time spent in the business versus on the business is always a struggle, and even more so now. So that's something you have to think about. You can be, really focused on the legal side of things, the billable hours, focusing on the work, which you have to. But especially if you're going to strike out, you really also, there's no other department and no other personnel to turn to focus on the business development, the marketing, everything else. So that's something you just have to, I think through before you dive in.
That's good. I'd like to end with a final question and just asking, what's the vision? What's the future of Danisi and Gassman?
Oh, that's a great question, Tanner. I would say the future is what we're doing now with the same concept as we grow. We're accessible and we are hands-on 24/7 with what we're doing, with our commitment. We don't have no other distractions in our life. And as we grow, we want to be as accessible and as hands-on for not only future clients to go meet, network, and be out there, but for every client we sign on, whatever they may need at any time of day, any time of the month, in any capacity for their venture, their company, their idea, their thought, from start to finish, in every way we can. That's and never be too big or forget that. That's, I think, my view.
Yeah, and I would like, if nothing else, for people to kind of walk away from working with us and say, I went into this with an expectation of X, I got X, Y, and Z, and things that I didn't even think of, and things that I didn't realize that my attorneys can do. And I think that if we can kind of walk into that legal/business nexus, if you will, and do it in a way based on our experiences and our skills that we've taken with us on our respective journeys, combined with that background. That to me is a real win, and I would love it for people to continue to say that as we go.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending time with us. We appreciate all the great advice.
Thank you so much.
Tanner, you're great. Thank you very much for having us.
Lawsome by ConsultWebs with Tanner Jones. For show notes, links, and info, go to consultwebs.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Watch for the next Lawsome episode to discover more breakthrough insights to build a thriving law firm.